Most so-called fat loss breakfasts fail for one simple reason. They try to control calories without fixing the deeper metabolic traffic jam that keeps your body hanging on to stubborn belly fat in the first place. People are told to eat more protein, add some fiber, cut a few carbs, and hope the scale finally moves. But for a huge number of men and women, especially after 40, that advice barely dents the problem because the real issue is happening at the level where your hormones are trying to communicate with your cells. Nearly a century ago, breakthrough research on cell function pointed to something most people still ignore today. If the outer structure of the cell is compromised, the messages that are supposed to get in do not get through efficiently. And that matters for fat loss because insulin, the hormone that helps direct fuel into cells, has to interact at that outer surface first. When your body has spent years building cell membranes out of the wrong kinds of fats from ultra-processed foods, fried foods, cheap oils, and packaged snacks, the signaling system can become sluggish. Your body starts acting like it is not hearing the message clearly, so it compensates by pushing out more insulin. And when insulin stays elevated, fat burning gets harder and belly fat tends to stick. That is why a lot of healthy breakfasts still leave people frustrated. They may be decent meals, but they are not addressing the environment that affects how your cells respond. That is exactly why this breakfast is different and why I keep coming back to it. It is simple, fast, surprisingly satisfying, and built around a combination that does more than just fill you up. It gives your body materials it can actually use while also helping to calm the blood sugar and hunger swings that sabotage fat loss later in the day. Dr. Leanna put together a simple visual for this because once you see how the pieces work together, the whole recipe makes sense. There are 3 core ingredients, and each one has a specific role. The first is flax oil. Flax oil is one of the richest sources of ALA omega-3 fat, and omega-3s are important because they support flexible, responsive cell membranes. Think of your cells like tiny homes with gates, sensors, and communication panels built into the outer wall. If the wall is rigid, inflamed, or poorly constructed, that whole system becomes less efficient. But when the body has access to better building material, the membranes can function more smoothly. That does not mean one meal magically changes everything overnight, but it does mean your breakfast can either work with your metabolism or against it, and most people have been eating breakfasts that push them the wrong direction for years. The second ingredient is cottage cheese, and this is where the recipe becomes more than just another high-protein bowl. Cottage cheese brings quality protein, helps with fullness, and contains sulfur-bearing amino acids that pair especially well with the unsaturated fats in flax oil. That pairing is one reason this combination has been talked about for so long in nutrition circles. On its own, flax oil is just oil. On its own, cottage cheese is just a protein food. But when you combine them correctly, you create a smoother, more usable mixture that supports better delivery and better texture at the same time. And the protein in the cottage cheese matters too, because protein first thing in the morning can help reduce cravings later, increase satiety, and make it easier to naturally eat less at your next meal without feeling like you are forcing yourself through the day. Then comes the third ingredient, and this is the one many people overlook: freshly ground flaxseed. The oil and the seed are not the same thing, and that matters. The oil gives you the fats, but the ground seeds bring fiber and lignans. Those lignans are especially interesting because they have been studied for their role in hormone balance. And that is one reason this recipe gets so much attention from people dealing with stubborn midsection weight. Belly fat is not just passive storage. It behaves like active tissue. It can influence hormones, inflammation, appetite signaling, and the whole metabolic picture. The compounds in flaxseed can help support a healthier hormonal environment, and when that environment improves, your body is often more willing to let go of the weight it has been protecting. But the word there is ground. Whole flax seeds are so tough that a lot of them can pass through you still mostly intact, which means you miss much of what you are eating them for. Grinding them fresh makes a major difference. So now you have the full picture. The flax oil supports the fat side of the equation. The cottage cheese provides the protein and the sulfur-rich support that helps the mixture come together in a more functional way. And the freshly ground flaxseed brings the fiber and lignans that help make this more than a high-protein snack. That is why this breakfast feels different from the usual oatmeal and hope strategy that so many people have been stuck in. Making it is easy, but there is one technique detail you do not want to miss. Start with 6 tablespoons of organic cottage cheese in a bowl. If you can get organic, great, because the fewer unnecessary additives and residues you are bringing in, the better. Then add 3 tablespoons of flax oil. That 2-to-1 balance is what most people use because it gives you the right consistency and makes the mixture rich without being unpleasant. Now here is the part that separates a good result from a disappointing one. Do not just stir it with a spoon and call it done. If you do that, you usually end up with a strange, oily layer sitting on top of the cottage cheese, and the texture is nowhere near as good. Use a small immersion blender and blend for about 30 seconds until the mixture turns smooth, creamy, and almost mousse-like. You want it to look unified, not separated. That blending step is not just about appearance. It transforms the whole eating experience and helps the ingredients come together the way you actually want them to. Once that creamy base is ready, add 3 tablespoons of freshly ground flaxseed and stir it in. At that point, you already have the foundation of the breakfast, and honestly, even before toppings, it is a serious metabolic support meal. But if you want to make it more enjoyable and more effective, there are 3 simple add-ins that can take it to another level. The first is psyllium husk. Just a tablespoon on top can make a noticeable difference. Psyllium is a form of soluble fiber that absorbs water and forms a gel-like texture in the digestive tract. That is useful because it slows the speed at which food moves through and can help flatten the blood sugar roller coaster that makes people crash, snack, and overeat later. It is not glamorous, but it is one of the cheapest tools you can add to a breakfast if your goal is feeling fuller, steadier, and less reactive to food for the rest of the morning. The second add-in is a handful of berries, and this is where flavor and function finally stop fighting each other. Berries bring color, sweetness, fiber, and plant compounds called anthocyanins, which are associated with a number of metabolic benefits. Dark berries in particular have earned their reputation for a reason. They fit fat loss far better than the sugar-heavy breakfast toppings most people use, and they make the bowl feel like something you actually want to eat, instead of something you are trying to survive for the sake of discipline. The third add-in is a tablespoon of nut butter, whether that is almond butter, peanut butter, or cashew butter. That little spoonful changes more than people expect. It deepens the flavor, improves satisfaction, and helps the breakfast stick with you. One of the biggest reasons diets fail is not lack of information. It is hunger. If your breakfast leaves you prowling the kitchen at 10:30, it was not a great fat loss breakfast no matter how healthy it looked on paper. Nut butter helps slow things down, gives you a richer mouthfeel, and can support the satiety hormones that make it easier to stop thinking about food every hour. So now, look at what this bowl is doing all at once. You have cultured dairy protein helping fullness and muscle support. You have flax oil bringing omega-3 rich fats that support cell membrane quality. You have ground flaxseed supplying fiber and lignans. You have optional psyllium to slow the glucose response. You have berries contributing antioxidants and better flavor. You have nut butter adding staying power. That is not random wellness decoration. That is a breakfast built with a purpose. And that purpose is not simply to be low calorie. It is to set up the first half of your day so your body is not constantly getting hit with the signals that drive storage, cravings, and fatigue. Another reason people like this breakfast is that it is fast. It sounds more complicated than it is. Once you have done it once or twice, it takes just a few minutes. Blend the base, stir in the ground flaxseed, add your extras, and you are done. It is also easy to customize. If you want it slightly sweeter, the berries usually handle that. If you want it thicker, a little extra ground flax can do it. If you want it colder and more dessert-like, you can chill your bowl and use very cold cottage cheese. The one thing you do not want to do is make it too far in advance, especially because flax oil is delicate. Keep the oil refrigerated, buy a quality brand in a dark bottle if possible, and do not heat it. Fresh matters here. That is part of why this breakfast feels so different from the average convenience food version of healthy eating. It is still simple, but it is built around ingredients that have a job to do. And if you have spent years wondering why fat loss got harder even though you have tried to clean up your diet, eat smaller meals, or switch breakfast foods over and over again, This is exactly the kind of shift that can finally make things click. You are not just trying to white-knuckle your way through hunger. You are giving your body a more favorable setup from the start of the day. That is what makes this breakfast so effective for people who feel like they are doing a lot right and still not getting the result. It works at the level of satiety, blood sugar handling, hormone support, and meal quality, all at once. One more important note. If you are taking blood thinners or have a condition that requires medication management around fiber or omega-rich foods, talk with your healthcare professional before making flax a regular part of your routine. But for everyone else looking for a smarter breakfast strategy, this is one of the easiest upgrades you can make. It is simple, affordable, satisfying, and built to support the exact systems that generic fat loss breakfasts usually ignore. When your first meal helps your body communicate better, feel fuller longer, and avoid the usual crash and crave cycle, everything later in the day gets easier. And that is the real secret most people miss. A great breakfast does not just save you calories in the morning. It changes the decisions you make for the next 6 to 8 hours. And that is where real fat loss momentum starts.